I started out managing apartments that we had bought and not knowing a whole lot and wondering why I had to pay this tax or why do I have to pay that tax, and painting some of them myself when money was tight. And that's the other thing about small businesses. The last person who gets paid often is the one that owns it, the one that's running it. You just have to have certainty and you have to know what to expect.
The Small Business Rundown is the official podcast of the National Federation of Independent Business, the member-driven voice of small business. NFIB and our members advocate to keep America's small businesses strong and independent in Washington, D.C., all 50 states, and the nation's courts.
Welcome to the Small Business Rundown, a biweekly podcast with information on independent businesses' victories and challenges in Washington, D.C. and state capitals. I'm Adam Temple, NFIB Senior Vice President of Advocacy. The 20% small business tax deduction is top of mind for many small business owners because it's set to expire at the end of this year. The result is a massive tax hike on 9 out of 10 small businesses. Here today to discuss the role of the deduction in his small business is NFIB member Michael Ervin, owner of Coal River Coffee Company in St. Albans, West Virginia. We'll also discuss the latest legislative updates with NFIB's Vice President of Federal Government Relations, Jeff Brabant. After that, we'll talk with United States Representative Carol Miller of West Virginia's 1st Congressional District about small business legislative priorities. That includes her view on the 20% small business tax deduction. So, Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Adam, thanks for having me. I love the podcast. To listen to it anytime one drops.
That's excellent. I want to start by hearing a little bit about your business. I'm very familiar with it. You're old hat to NFIB. You've worked with us on a number of different issues, and in particular, you've been in some of the advertisements that we've run that have gotten a lot of attention. But for those that aren't aware, can you tell us a little bit about your business, how it started and how it's going?
Sure. Just like many people, I worked a 9-to-5 job, but I kind of got the itch to do something different. In particular, I was, driving back to my hometown often and saw that nobody was doing anything and it needed revitalization and just needed some economic growth. And at the time, I was roasting coffee in my garage. And I was buying directly from farmers from across the world and roasting it myself. And everybody really loved it. And they're like, eventually my wife was like, why don't you start selling this? Why don't you start a coffee shop? And so that sent me on the road in the path of developing Coal River Coffee Company, which I roast right on the Coal River. And that's where we came up with our name. So my wife and I, January 29th of 2018, decided that we would start Coal River Coffee Company. And part of it was due to just the environment, the economic environment at the time, the small business environment. And one of the people I asked about small business said, well, taxes are so much better for small businesses now because of the TCJA. And I was like, well, what is that? So they explained it to me and how taxes are a little bit less for small businesses like the one I was starting. So that was an encouragement just to see what would happen in the very beginning. And we had no idea that it would be successful, we hoped, but that's how we started.
That's awesome. And you have, like I mentioned before, you've been in NFIB ads, you've testified before Congress, you've come to Washington, D.C. to meet with representatives, you've met with them back home. So this issue is not new for you. You're very up to speed on it. But tell us a little bit about, and let me start by saying thank you for all that you've done. It's made a huge difference on this issue. I think all small businesses would agree. What exactly has the small business deduction meant for your business since you've started it?
Well, like I said, it was an encouragement that the taxation wouldn't be as hard. I remember that in the very beginning. I didn't understand what that meant at the time until we started having to do our taxes after the first year. But what that has meant is we've been able to take what would have gone into the coffers of the IRS and put it directly back into our business. So immediately we've been able to develop and grow our structure of our team. So we've been able to provide jobs. We've been able to use that money to purchase our buildings. So not only have we been able to develop a little bit of an economy for people, we've been able to revitalize not just our economy here, but our buildings in our own Main Street. So we're buying buildings with it. We're refurbishing the buildings and providing better spaces for other entrepreneurs to start a business in our small town.
So it's actually affecting other businesses as well.
It really is. It really is. And we've been able to now we do some coaching and encouragement of other folks to start their own, whatever it is. It could be a coffee shop. We have, record shops that have started. We have a new design company that has moved into our building that we've purchased and are revitalizing. And we're providing living spaces too for
Hmm.
people with apartments.
That's outstanding. Now we'll take a short break.
In a big win for small businesses, the U.S. Treasury Department has issued a new rule that exempts all U.S. small businesses from the beneficial ownership information reporting requirements. This means that small businesses do not need to file federal BOI reports. NFIB continues to advocate for Congress to permanently repeal the unconstitutional law that established this mandate, and for FinCEN to immediately destroy all BOI data already submitted by U.S. small businesses. In the courts, our lawsuit against the invasive and unconstitutional BOI law is still active. You can learn more at nfib.com/protectprivacy.
Welcome back, Michael. Before we left off, you were talking about what you were able to do proactively because of the 20% small business tax deduction. On the flip side, tell us a little bit about what's going to happen if it is allowed to expire. What's going to go away?
Wow. I wholeheartedly believe this would be detrimental, not only to my small business, but there are businesses all throughout America will be affected, all main streets. But I know that smaller communities, especially in Appalachia, places that aren't an urban center, they're probably going to be hit the hardest. These mom and pop shops that maybe they don't even realize what is coming down the pike for them. I know just for me in 2023, we were able to save $23,000
Hmm.
just on taxation. And I know that's going up in 2024 and 2025, but how much we're saving. And I just can't imagine what it's going to be like for folks that may not even know how this is going to affect them. But I know for us, our employees probably will end up suffering. We'll have to whittle down how many jobs we have.
Uh-huh.
We won't be able to provide as many raises or even bonuses. There are other buildings just in my town alone that need revitalization, and we won't be able to use some of that money to purchase those buildings or encourage others to have a business in them. We also have other programs, community outreach programs. We have one where we roast a coffee, and a majority of the proceeds go to a scholarship fund for people that have gone through recovery,
Hmm.
and they use that to, pay for their schooling. So I'm sure that at some point those programs and those things will have to be reevaluated in what we do, and we'll have to plan and prepare. We're already talking with our accountant right now because it's still kind of unclear. And
Yeah.
that's what's unfortunate right now.
It's not lost on you that the corporate rate was made permanent in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act while the small business deduction's allowed to expire. Give us a little perspective on what that would mean for you against your West
Yeah.
Virginia corporate competitors.
Man, I'm glad you brought that up because I know in particular for the coffee industry, folks like me, our tax rate will jump quite a bit. It'll be twice as much as what the corporate tax rate is. And so what that's going to do is we won't have as much of a level playing field when it comes to providing benefits for our employees. We won't have as many jobs to provide for our employees as what they will have. And also putting back into the infrastructure of our coffee shop. So like Tim Hortons and Starbucks are just two of the bigger corporations. There are these drive-through coffee shops are popping up all over West Virginia right now. And they're going to be getting that corporate tax rate, whereas ours will be 20% higher than what they get. And to me, but not just to me, but I'm sure to the average American, if they knew that, they'd
Yeah.
probably be just flabbergasted by that difference.
Yeah, and Jeff Brabant, Vice President of Federal Government Relations at NFIB, along those lines, can you provide some more perspective on what it would mean for big businesses versus small when it comes to the 20% small business deduction expiring?
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. One thing to provide some context of how we got here, I'll give you a quick history. Jump back to 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Michael described earlier, brought the corporate rate down from 35 to 21%, 14% rate cut. The top individual rate was only lowered from 39.6 to 37%, 2.6 points. 2.6 is not 14. So what Congress decided, well, how do we deal with this inequity? 21% is a lot lower than 37. Are we going to have most 9 and 10 small businesses, which are not C corporations, which pay this individual rate? Are we going to have them disadvantaged? What they said is, let's give them this 20% deduction to lower their effective rate so it's much closer to that of the C Corp corporate rate. So what we're looking at is a corporate rate that's permanent and a 20% small business deduction that expires along with individual rate hikes. So we're going to see the small business sector having significantly higher taxes at a time when their larger C Corp competitors don't have that. And that is no way to foster competition.
Yeah, exactly. And Michael, what is your key message for lawmakers who are considering their options and whether to make the small business deduction permanent in the next round of legislation?
Well, namely, Congress has the power to fix this. They're really the only ones who can. And they need to remember that small businesses are the foundation of the United States economy, ultimately. And so we deserve the same exact certainty and equality as the big corporations enjoy. And that's why, the Main Street Tax Certainty Act, I believe that they really need to get behind this so that the deduction can be permanent for us. At least make it, somewhat close to what the corporate tax rate is if they can't make it permanent, or give us an extension to work on an act that will level the playing field for us.
Sure. Jeff, what are the chances right now? Where do things stand with the Main Street Tax Certainty Act, and what's the outlook in the next couple months?
It currently has significant bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. What we're looking at this year, though, is with so many expiring provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the TCJA, there's probably going to be one big, massive tax bill, and the Main Street Tax Certainty Act hopefully will be incorporated into that big bill so that we can get some permanence here. There's still ways to go in Congress, but they're on the way to doing a large tax bill. And ideally, since this is one of the more popular bipartisan provisions, it makes it into that bill.
Michael, given that you have testified before Congress, that you've met with members of Congress about this issue specifically, what do you want other small business owners to know about how to get involved with advocacy when it comes to Congress?
Well, I obviously got involved through advocacy because of the NFIB, and that allowed me to see firsthand how these policies impact small businesses on Main Street. At first, I'm just a coffee roaster in little old West Virginia in a small town. What can I do? But I quickly learned that lawmakers will actually listen to people like me when I speak up, when we make enough noise. And if we raise our voices together, the only thing they can do is just listen, and they will act. I believe they will. And so, for any other business owner that's listening to this today, I'd say, first of all, write a letter, reach out to your representatives, join organizations, especially like this one, the NFIB, because they actually do what they say they're going to do. You guys advocate for us, and you give us a platform and a seat at the table when otherwise we probably wouldn't think we could get there.
That's a great point. Well, before we go, Michael, anything to add?
First of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity of being on the podcast today. This particular issue is vital. It's very important to me and to all these other small business owners that I know and that I coach. And small businesses are essential to community development and keeping the identity of America. So it's time for Congress to step up and ensure that we get the same stability that big corporations already have.
Jeff, anything before we go?
Just like to thank Michael for coming on and everything that you have done to push the cause of small business owners. Michael, we didn't mention this, has testified before the House Ways and Means Committee. He's met with U.S. senators in the U.S. Capitol to discuss this issue, and encourage any other small business owner, go to NFIB.com, go to smallbusinessdeduction.com. Tell Congress your story. It's the stories that really motivate members of Congress. When Michael tells them about how he's revitalized his Main Street, that really resonates. So, and any other personalized story you can tell members of Congress, do it. That's smallbusinessdeduction.com.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Michael, thank you for taking time away from your business to join us today and talk about this, and for all the efforts that you've put forth on behalf of other small businesses on the 20% small business tax deduction. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.
Now I'd like to welcome United States Representative Carol Miller of West Virginia's 1st Congressional District. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us on the Small Business Rundown.
It's nice to be with you.
So you are a member of the Main Street Caucus, also a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. So you're very well versed in the needs of small businesses. What do you want small businesses to know about your priorities and your work in Congress?
Well, it's pretty simple. I want small businesses to thrive and to prosper. They are the backbone of America, always have been. They're the ones that support the Little Leagues. They're the ones that help the Girl Scouts, the county fair. Small businesses in my state, it's 98.9. So
Right.
in my book, that's pretty darn good. It's mom and pop. I've been a member of Main Street since I first got here, January of 19, and I've watched it grow. We've got a great group of men and women that are involved, and to me, it is the heart of America.
Exactly, which is what makes the 20% small business tax deduction so important. What, if you could tell me a little bit, what brought you to support the Main Street Tax Certainty Act that makes the small business deduction permanent?
I'm a small business owner myself, but that really wasn't why. But the big word with business is certainty. I have heard that forever. And I just knew as a small business, I wanted to know what the rules were. Yeah, and don't move the goalpost on me. And to me, that's been the hardest thing in Congress, because every 2 years, every 4 years, there's changes in administration, changes in the makeup of the House or the Senate. And certainty is what helps business thrive. If you're going to make any kind of investment, whatever you're doing, you need to know for about 10 years out what to expect. There are 30 million small businesses in the United States. That's a lot of small businesses.
Right. And you mentioned certainty and the ability to plan. Do you think that goes towards urgency as well, the need to pass this bill sooner than later?
Of course, but I always feel urgency here in Congress. I always want to get things done, because when you are a small business owner and the buck stops here, you make decisions and you go with them. And here it's all just this very long process. I started out managing apartments that we had bought and not knowing a whole lot and wondering why I had to pay this tax or why do I have to pay that tax, and painting some of them myself when money was tight. And that's the other thing about small businesses. The last person who gets paid often is the one that owns it, the one that's running it. You just have to have certainty and you have to know what to expect. And yet in this world, I could go back to COVID. Nobody knew that was going to happen. And how you possibly could plan for something like that, you couldn't. But it also goes into how resilient we can be as Americans and as entrepreneurs.
Why is it important for small business owners to reach out to their lawmakers, either about this issue or other ones that are important?
It's always important for people to reach out. And, I go home nearly every weekend unless I'm on some congressional delegation to somewhere, which I did just do. I am on the Little League, field. I'm on the soccer field. I'm wherever my grandchildren are. I'm in Kroger's. I go and visit small businesses. If we have a week in district, it is packed because I'll be in the hospital. I have 28 counties to cover. It's 7 hours for me from one end of my district to the other. So
Wow.
We come full so that people can see me. I may not be on TV, but believe me, I am working. I am meeting with people and listening to people because that's my job.
Absolutely. Well, we'll let you get back to your job. I know you're busy. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm very grateful and proud to be the representative of the 1st District in West Virginia. Know that I am only a phone call or a text away. My staff is always so shocked that so many people just text me because we all kind of know each other. But I'm here to help, so don't hesitate to let me hear from you if there's anything that needs my attention, okay?
Absolutely. We'll do that. Congresswoman Carol Miller, we know you're busy with your job, and we appreciate you taking time away from it to talk to us about the Main Street Tax Certainty Act and making the small business deduction permanent.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. The show notes for today's episode will include a link to learn more about this crucial tax deduction, which is NFIB's top advocacy priority. You'll also find a link to urge Congress to make the 20% small business tax deduction permanent as soon as possible before it expires this year. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send us an email at podcast@nfib.org. Now, I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on today's Small Business Rundown. We'll be back every 2 weeks bringing you news and analysis from Washington, D.C. and state capitals so that you, whether you're a business owner or a supporter of one, can continue to blaze a trail.
The Small Business Rundown is brought to you by NFIB, the voice of small business. You can find us at nfib.com and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.